Federal Reserve Board Governor Sarah Raskin said that growing inequality was a major hindrance to the recovery of the economy. Like, this growing inequality between the rich and the poor, although she did not exactly use the words rich and poor, was a major obstacle to the recovery of the economy, bringing it back to pre-recession days. Speaking to the National Economists Club and a group of government economists, she said this growing inequality was actually one of the things that they're deeply investigating, concerning possible recovery for the economy in the next few years. The Pew Research Center actually came out with some interesting data that certainly verifies that this is a growing problem. In fact, it showed that the top 7% of Americans saw a 28% increase in their earnings in the 2009 to 2011 period, while the other 93% of people actually saw their incomes drop by 4 percentage points. In my view, the large and increasing amount of inequality in income and wealth, which has been an ongoing development for decades, may have exacerbated the crisis, and I think more research is required to determine whether it may pose a significant windhead to the recovery of the crisis for years to come. So while I am hopeful that pressures will ease further at home prices continue to rebound, I also believe that some of the restraints on the economy may be quite long-lasting. About 2/3 of all job losses in the recession were middle-wage occupations such as manufacturing, skilled construction, and office administration jobs. But these occupations have accounted for less than 1/4 of the job growth during the recovery. By contrast, lower-wage occupations such as retail sales, food service, and other lower-paying service jobs accounted for only 1/5 of job losses during the recession, but more than 1/2 of the total job gains during the recovery. As a result, these trends in job creation, which could well have been exacerbated by the severe nature of the crisis, the earnings potential for many households likely remains below what they had anticipated in the years before the recession. What happened was, she says, there was a lot of layoffs, and then what happened, there were currents in globalization and changes in the technological field. Now, what she says happens here is that people have been unable to adjust to that, more specifically unable to adjust to the technological change, and thus have been unable to actually be prepared for work in different fields, and that they have remained in these places because of that. I, however, disagree with this argument that there's a big technological change and that people are unwilling to adapt, and that this is the reason why there's so much unemployment right now. Of course, there are some people of much higher in age that find it difficult to change, but that specifically, I don't think, is the actual problem here. More specifically, what we're looking at, because I think just the technological thing is just a scapegoat. People want to be poor. This is a nice little capitalist gloss they put over everything. What I believe really happened here is the shipping of manufacturing jobs to the third world. Now, obviously, this was something that the capitalist class had wanted to do for a very long time, because when you take these jobs and you send them to the third world, it's obviously cheaper. And when it's cheaper, you can lower your price, compete with other people better, get better sales. See, the problem is that if you take everybody's job away, and all you leave them with is very poor minimum wage jobs, lowering their household income, they can't buy things. And when you live in an economic system like capitalism, which survives off the consumption of commodities, you have to be able to buy them. And you have to be able to buy these commodities in order for that system to actually function. So if you actually impoverish people and they're no longer able to buy them, they can't consume, and the whole system is based on consumption. What's happened here is the ruling class has increased their own profits and decreased even further what the working class, and to a large degree the middle class, actually gets. They do this because they're greedy and they want more profits. It's just how the system works. They want greater profits with lower expenditures. But we need to have an income too in order to be able to purchase those things that they are selling. And when we don't have enough money to purchase them, well, we can't buy them, and thus we cannot consume. Now, to get back more on my point, I'm saying it was not technological change that actually caused this to happen. Of course, technology changed, but you could see right about the mid-90s, there was less technological innovation in this field. There was less of it. Of course, somebody's going to say that I'm going to say that it never happened, which I didn't. Now, a lot of these jobs went overseas. They didn't become more technically efficient. They went overseas, where it's actually cheaper to use third world labor than it is to use new, more efficient technology. It's still actually cheaper to send to the third world. So while there have been there has been the development of new technology. That's not been the primary source of this, because the jobs were still sent overseas, even if they are more efficient and better through newer technology. So I think this really is just a scapegoat of blaming technology for putting people out of work, when the real reason is our manufacturing jobs, the jobs that the working class relied on, are now no longer here. Noting that public consumption is the fuel to the capitalist system is by no means a Marxist position and a Marxist opinion. Keynesians believe the same thing too. The problem here, what people aren't recognizing, is that there is always going to be a push for more money for the higher classes, the 1%, if you want to use the liberal term, or as ours, we use the capitalist class. There's always going to be an increase in the miserization of the working class, a greater growing gap between the rich and the poor. And then when you do that, and people can't consume, they can't purchase the products that are needed to keep the cycle of consumption going. What people are not getting is that the capitalists aren't going to stop doing this. They're not going to say, we have enough. They won't. That's ironically one of the self-defeating problems of capitalism. They never get enough, and they never realize that they have too much, and then they end up hurting themselves. So that's really what I think is going on. Of course, the Federal Reserve, they're not stupid. They know that consumption is the one thing that keeps capitalism going. Without consuming, there is no capitalism. There's no real equilibrium for them there. It's all about consumption. And at least they're starting to recognize, hey, we need people who have enough money to consume in order for consumption to continue.